Hello everyone, in this video we're going to go over some basics of Python. It's important to pay attention that we are not going to cover every aspect of the basics programming language of Python. We're just going to do enough for our purposes of data analytics. There are a lot of things that I will not cover or discuss in this video that could be said are Python basics, but we're just gonna get our feet wet, just get enough to know that it's gonna sustain us for being able to use Python for data analytics. So let's get to it. So the most important thing to learn when we are learning about a new programming language is different types of variables. In Python, you do not need to declare a variable. So you just need to start using it. So I say my var and I put 10, which is a number, integer, or I say my var2, I assign hello, which is a string, or I say my var3, I assign a number to it, which is a floating point. It has a decimal. So once I run this chunk of code, it runs, there's no error. So it means that there are things that are happening in the computer based on the commands we are making for the computer. So if I say print my var, it's going to print 10. And if I say print my var3, it's going to print 3.8. If I say print my var2, it's going to print hello. So what's going on? We did not declare any of these variables to be integer or string or floating point. That's one of the capabilities of Python language, that you can just start using a variable. So if I were curious to check what was the type of these variables, I could just say use the keyword type. This is a function that returns the type that the variable has. So if I run these three parts, it says my var 10 is integer. So without even having to declare it, the Python already knows it's an integer. If I say my var2, it will say it's string, and if I run the type of my var3, it will give me the floating point. So to contain data, Python has a couple of different ways you can contain data. All of these are very useful ways of containing data, and as we go through this course, we will be using modules that in the background will use all of these different ways of keeping the data, but we do not directly use these. But it's important for us to understand some of their properties and the way they behave. So because of that, we'll learn a little bit about lists. So lists are basically a collection of different items. In a list, you can have strings, integers. You can even have list of lists. So let's see an example. So here, for example, I say my list is equal to, you open a bracket and you start separating your items with commas. So you have comma, the first item, comma, second item, comma, third item, and fourth item. So if I run this, now if I say my list, now I have that list. A very important aspect of lists are being able to access the elements of it. The most simplest way to access the elements are using the indexes of those lists. So for example, if you start from index 0 all the way to the end, it starts from accessing the first element, second element, third element, fourth element, and so on and so forth. But pay attention that the indexes for list start from 0. So the first element is 0. So if I say my list bracket open 0 bracket close, I will have the first element. And if I say 1, and then I will have the second element. As I said, we can have a list of lists. So here I have 3 lists, list 1, list 2, list 3. And I create a list of lists as list 1, comma, list 2, and comma, list 3. So if I run this, I will have literally a list of lists. So how do I access the elements of a list of lists? To do that, we need to go by get access to the first list, the inside list, and then get the elements we want. So for example, here I say my list 2, and then in that list, whatever I bring, I want the first element. So let's predict what this is going to be. So it's going to say this third 0, 1, 2. So it's going to bring this list, and in that list, which is this one, I want the index 1. So index 0, 1. So if I run this, we should get 3.6. Let's see. There we go, 3.6. And if I say my list 1, it's going to bring this whole list for us. There we go. So we have that. And there is another thing. The negative index has meaning in Python. So if I say my list -1, it starts from the end. So my list is this one, -1, start from the end. It will bring list 3 for us. So we should see this list if we run this. There we go. So if I had said -2, it would be -1, -2, it would bring this list for us. So let's see. There we go. A function, very useful function, is to see how many elements a list or a collection of items have, is len, which stands for length. So if I say len my list, it will show me 3 because it has 3 items. There we go. If I say len my list 2, my list 2 list, this is 1, 0, 1, 2. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4 items. So this should give us result 4. Fine, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it was 5. You can also change the element of list by accessing it. It's not just read-only collection. So if I explicitly say, here in this example, say I want whatever it is in this cell and this part of my collection of items to be Anna, we can see that it's going to change. So I have print whatever it is before this operation, and then whatever it is after the operation. So let's run this and see what happens. So before having run this, I have an and this part, so which is list 1. So this is list index 0, list index 1. So we're here, and now element 3, element 1, element 0, like index 1, index 2, index 0, index 1, index 2, and index 3. So we're accessing this and we are changing that to Anna. So we do that once we run this. Now that we say okay, what's gonna look like after, we see that this has changed. So we can also change the elements of list using you just assigning that value to them. A very important things that you will have to learn working with any collections of items such as list is slicing. Slicing will become very useful, especially when we start working with strings. So basically, the concept of slicing is you want to get a slice of your list. So for example, here in my list 2, I have 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 7 items here. And I want to get the items from index 2 all the way to index 5. So index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4, index 5. So I will be retrieving these values instead of having to tell explicitly one by one. I can just like get this slice of the list. So if I run this, it will give me 34, 45, and 56. As you can see, the slicing, as I made a mistake here, does not end at the end of the number. It ends right before it. So you say, I want to start at this index 0, 1, 2, and I want to end at this index. So 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is the index 4, so that's why I stop here. So that's what we get. If you don't specify an ending, it means all the way to the end. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it will get 56 all the way to 78 if I run this. There we go. And if you don't specify the beginning, it means that you want it from the beginning. So from the beginning will be 0, 1, 2, 3. The 3 is the ending, so it's going to bring 12, 23, and 34. So let's see it. There we go. Before we end this video, let's take a quick look at strings. Strings are a very important capabilities of programming languages these days, to be able to collect them, record them, and also do many different operations on them. It's very important. So strings are basically collections of characters. So for example, this my string here, it's a collection of these characters. And every time you create any strings, you can also see it as a collection of characters. So I call this, run this, and now I have a string with a sentence. But I also can like slice it. Like for example, say I want from -11 to -1. So -11, starting from here, it's -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7, -8, -9, -10, -11. So start from here, -11, till -1. Till -1, which is -1. So basically, this is going to pop out my name, Roy Jafari. So let's see it. There we go. So you can also do slicing on these strings. I could have done the same thing by doing forward indexing instead of like backward indexing. It would give me the same value. Actually, this has to start from 11 to this to give me the same effect. So yeah, there we go. Even though strings are basically collections of items, but they do not necessarily behave like lists. So for example, one of the differences is the fact that you cannot explicitly change the character, one character in a list. So if I run this, you should expect to see an error. So it says str object does not support item assignment. So you cannot assign an item or like a character in that string. The last thing we'll learn, we'll like come back to strings, not in the name of let's learn about strings, but we will use strings in this course a lot. But the last thing we'll learn about the strings is the fact that if you have an object of a string in the object-oriented programming Python, the object itself comes with some properties that those properties are of the type of functions. So it allows you to run a functions on the string itself. So if I, for example, say my string, which was that sentence, if I say find, it will basically find where the name Roy starts. It gives me that index. So if I run this, it tells me that the name starts at number 11. And if I say find Jafari, it also tells me where it starts, where that last name starts. But if I say Ruhollah, which is my given name, the ones that my parents chose, but I didn't use it in this sentence, it will give me the index -1, which for this function, it means this string is not, this collections of characters or this string is not a part of the other string. So yes, that's what it means, -1. So another function which is very useful is saying split. If I say split a string, it means that split it everywhere you see and a space, make that a separate string. So when you say split, you will see that you will have a collection of different strings. So if I wanted to split with different characters, I could just simply pass that character. So if I want to split that string with the word is, you can see it finds that is and then split it into 2 characters. So I have my name space Rojafari period. But we will see how we will use the function split. I mean, this doesn't make an intuitive sense here, but we will see how we use this function in the other parts of this course. The last thing we'll learn in this video is the operation of n. And normally it's using conditionals that we will learn in the next video, in one of the next videos. But here we're learning about n because it's very useful when we are operating or working with strings. So for example, I have my string split, which is that list of strings, and I want to see if Roy is a part of this list of strings. So let me actually change this to here, so we know what the list of strings is. So this is the list of strings, right? So I want to see if Roy is in this part list of the strings. I mean, I could eyeball this and see it is, but you know, that's not the point of programming language. The point of programming language is being able to get the computer to do something for us. So if I run this, it says true. If I say Ruhollah, it says false because Ruhollah is not there. And like I said, you could use different things to do your splits. So here I've used Roy. All right, in this video we learned a little bit about Python. I mean, we didn't really go through a lot of the basics of Python. We just got our feet wet just to know enough to get us started. And this is as much you need to know because we are not going to be using Python really when we do data analytics. We're going to use different modules that are designed using the Python's basics. So whoever has created those modules that we will get to learn, they must have had a very good understanding of Python basics because they are using that as the ground or the platform to create their modules that everyone's using these days. So this is just the right amount of knowing about Python basics for us to be able to use those modules.